Hey everyone, it's Ivan, KidBatcher.com, out here to tell you about the 3-day shotgun class down at Thunder Ranch.
One more black.
It was honestly a blast, pun intended. No, it was a ton of fun. Amazing. Honestly, I think it was the first shotgun class I've ever actually taken, and definitely learned a ton. Started off initially in the classroom with Jack, kind of going over like, hey, welcome to Thunder Ranch, here's what you can expect from this class, as well as kind of an overview of just kind of housekeeping stuff. And that went fairly quickly, and then we're up on it, out on the range, doing some shooting. The first bit of shooting we did was basically on the tail end and part of the safety brief, which is like, don't mess with shotguns, respect them. And so, like, not that you wouldn't any gun, but man, a 1-ounce slug. So basically they ended up taking a big, I don't know how many pounds this big pork shoulder was, putting it up, initially shooting it with birdshot. Saw what that did. Not too terribly much from that distance. Again, right load, right distance. Next up was some buckshot, same thing. And then lastly, follow it up with a 1-ounce slug. Yeah, definitely respect the shotgun. And after that, we got after it. So we initially started with getting a good solid 0 with slugs. And honestly, shotguns, just in general, not super fun to shoot from the prone. So fortunately, there were a bunch of tripods with bags on top of them. So you can basically stand, get a really good steady shot, or steady position rather, and break your shots and print on paper. And basically, everyone had the opportunity to go through and get their guns zeroed. There at that range, we were just zeroing at 25. We would eventually confirm further out, but for the sake of what we were doing, called it there. And then while we had paper up, it was time to pattern. And so different guns like different loads, and of course, whatever people brought was whatever they brought. For my own part, I ended up bringing some Federal Flight Control. That stuff's amazing. And I was actually pretty pleased. Again, shooting that Genesis Arms 5-inch barrel. But yeah, stuff did pretty good. So initially we patterned at, I guess it was, man, I want to say like 5, 15, and 25. Might have been 10, 15, 25. Memory not serving me right now. But basically went through and kind of saw what, respectively, our gun was doing with our ammo. Pretty cool. From there was a block on stance, because if you don't have a good stance, that gun's going to push you around a lot. And so basically worked through kind of mechanics of that, and then went over loading. And I'll be honest, well, one, it was fun, and I definitely picked some stuff up. I've used a number of different shotguns, like peripherally throughout the years. So I'm like, oh yeah, this. But it's interesting because all of these shotguns basically have very similar but different method of loading as far as how to actually get around to get chambered or how to unload them for that matter. And so yeah, basically went through that. And then honestly, we ended up spending quite a bit of time shooting the guns, which in turn is practicing loading, because shotguns, the problem is they're always empty. So as soon as you shoot it, you need to start loading it. Of course, I showed up to a shotgun class with 12-gauge carbine. So for the most part, I was pretty much just doing tack reloads for the sake of doing tack reloads while everyone else was trying to constantly stuff these tubes. But getting some good reps out there. And then wrapping up that day, Rolling Thunder, which is pretty cool, especially if you have a conventional shotgun, in that it's just forcing you to, with added pressure of the 4 people around you, to get this thing up. And so the way it works is you start with 1 round in your gun, and you have 5 targets, 5 people, fire around, next person, fire around, all at target one. And as soon as it gets the last person, they say out, and shooter number one now needs to fire one round on target one round on target two, after which the second shooter, one on two, on down the line until finally out, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you keep going until you end up shooting 1 through 5. Of course, thing is you got to load that thing. For my own part, shooting that Genesis shotgun, I had 1 or 2 tack reloads in there, and easy day. That right there ended up wrapping up day one. It's actually a lot of fun out there, but came back out that next morning and got right back after it. First thing we ended up working on that day two was actually some movement with respect to shooting and going through and getting a number of reps. And then probably one of the more valuable things in that class, which I think is just really cool, is individual assessment, which on the one hand, it's like, oh man, I don't want to go stand in front of people and get picked apart, but really, really valuable. And so, again, no egos, nothing like that, but you essentially go and get into a shooting position and fire however many rounds you need to. And the instructors say, hey, okay, this is what I see happening. Here, try this, whatever it may be, like just these little critiques. And it's not like anyone is shooting in the middle of a vacuum either, in that you have the opportunity to look at other shooters and you're like, oh man, that's actually what I'm doing too. Like, I need to address that. Because, man, shooting is a journey. You will never get to the destination. You're just always learning stuff. And so being able to learn from other people, to include being able to actually get that critique on your own shooting position and all of that stuff, really, really valuable. And then why not a little bit more rolling thunder? So ended up doing some more of that before we ended up breaking for lunch. Then we had a working lunch of sorts. Again, really valuable, basically a big med block. And going through, hey, here is one like March, as far as priority work, things like that. And here's all these different things that you should hopefully have in a first aid kit. And something that's really cool is now Thunder Ranch actually has a first aid, I think it's packaged for them by North American Rescue, memory serves, maybe. But basically really high quality, reputable stuff, and yeah, turnkey solution. And so they basically went through though, and we're like, hey, here's where you're going to use this for, whether it's something thoracic or obviously hemorrhaging, any of these different things to include hypothermia and all of these different things that ideally you should have in a all-encompassing kit. And really awesome med brief. And after that, more shooting to get done. So this whole basically class takes place up on Brown Range, or a range just adjacent to it, whereas Brown Range is basically a long KD range, all kinds of steel targets. And so we then had the opportunity, which was really cool, to basically shoot our slugs out to steel at 50, and then 100, and then 200. And so being able to figure out what your holds are. For my own part, honestly, 50, super easy, 100 all day long, 200, I definitely had to have a hold. I mean, again, 5-inch barrel, shooting Federal Hydroshock slugs, and then actually ended up trying to shoot the target at 300. Probably would have got it if I sent a few more. My first one was so short, I'm like, wow. Like, I'm aiming so incredibly high. And then I'm like, okay, see my impact, and I ended up basically bracketing it. But man, slug gun at 300 yards, 5-inch barrel. Like, all right. I mean, I didn't want to be down there at 300 yards. Thing's pretty impressive, but really fun. And then of course we also did a little bit of patterning with respect to buckshot. Again, shooting whatever we had loaded. I had flight control at 50 yards. Seeing what our pattern was, about how much we were actually getting on steel, and then same thing with 100. And the interesting thing shooting at 100 is your pattern comes out and generally is opening up, and so depending on the pattern of your gun, sometimes you'd be better served like aiming off to the right to actually get more pellets onto the steel, or aiming off respectively to the left. Just because if you held dead center, sometimes you would have your pellets go over and under it and basically all around it, which is kind of crazy, but great learning experience. And speaking of learning, probably one of the coolest things like that I had just never done was there was a vehicle block with shotguns. And so basically set up targets and have different students, hey, I need you to go ahead and shoot a slug or buckshot, whatever it may be. Here's your point of aim. And then getting to go see what came of said shots and watching, slugs just punch straight through. And then same with doing some stuff with targets inside. We also did some other shots, basically shooting through automotive glass. Initially, they were like, hey, what do you have loaded in your pistol? And I think one of the guys had some hydroshock or something. Like, all right, shoot here. And sure enough, deflected down, as it does through automotive glass. And then again, getting to see what buck or slug respectively was doing. One of the most interesting things coming away from that was actually seeing how much like that B pillar will stop, especially when the door is closed. In that there's so much essentially just folded metal in there that, I was kind of blown away. Like double-aught buck right into the side of that thing, and I mean, I still wouldn't want to be hiding on the other side of it, but it stopped all of it, which was pretty crazy. Definitely some cool learning with that vehicle block, and that right there kind of wrapped up day 2. Coming back out on day 3, started kind of spicy. So we basically had fresh steel, like freshly painted steel, and we ended up patterning whatever buckshot we were shooting, again, on the steel at 15 yards and then at 25 yards. And they're like, cool, everyone sees what your gun's doing, right? And everyone's like, all right, cool. They're like, all right, line it up. And so then brought out this hostage target. So you have that steel, which is now your hostage, and then you have a swinger plate, which is what you need to hit. Don't hit the hostage. And again, taking the information you had from patterning your gun at 15 yards as well as at 25 yards, and initially starting at 15 and having to go through and don't shoot the hostage. Definitely a little bit nerve-wracking, especially like everyone's watching, like, oh man, I do not want to smoke this hostage. And after we all worked through it at 15, moved back to 25, where for my own part, I'm like, man, I know kind of what this is doing. And so, I was like, man, don't want to hit the hostage. And so at that point, when it came to me, everyone honestly did pretty good. A few people threw a couple rounds into the hostage, probably more the ammo than anything. When it came to me, I basically was like high left of essentially my target, that target head, and it took me a couple rounds because I walked down into it with a couple rounds and eventually got it. But I was not super confident in that, but that's what it was there for. Like the whole idea of one, confidence as well as competence, but knowing your gun and how hard you can shoot it should you need to. So can you take a hostage shot at however far? 15 with that gun and that load all day long. 25, getting spicy. Probably go to a slug. After that, we ended up, of course, doing more shooting. And this time is basically kind of a combat load. So the idea being you end up running dry, throw one in the chamber, get the gun back up. And somewhere in there, I can't remember if it was then or later, I ended up getting some reps with my Henry. But for my own part, I would basically have a magazine that's dry, take a round out, throw the round in, send the bolt, fire it, and rinse and repeat. And then after working that for a while, we ended up going into some facing movements, whether it was facing to the left or right or uprange, whatever it may be. And again, turn initially, establish like, hey, there's a shoot threat, get your body squared up, bring your gun up, and breaking shots. Another thing we ended up working on was slug changeover, which for me was attack reload because I have a 12 gauge carbine. But the idea of, and again, it's kind of interesting because there's all the different makes and models of shotguns there, and everyone is a little bit different. So what do you need to do to actually get a round out of the shotgun so that you can now put a slug in? And then also, depending on the shotgun, how can you get that round out and not drop another round that's already in the tube back onto the loading tray, so now you have like essentially a double feed. And so went through kind of, hey, best practice with all the guns, how to go about doing this, and then work through some slug changeover, or in my case, some tack reloads. And then something that was pretty cool, especially since huge variety of guns, basically get a fam fire everything. So I think, I don't know, like 3 rounds or something through every gun. And so essentially just started shooting down the line of guns. When you've finished at the one end, you go back to the other end and get to just shoot through all the different guns. Pretty cool. And then at one point, fun little competition, basically head-to-head shooting. And so it was interesting seeing how different people would run either pumps or semis, and they wouldn't respectively always win like one to the other. Really it came down to, one, not fumbling a load, and just who was quick and smooth. After that, we worked some barricade drills. Basically just, again, working from shooting different levels as well as different shooting positions and getting to just kind of rep through it. For my own part, since I ended up bringing my old Henry, I definitely got some reps shooting that, as well as, of course, my Genesis. There was also a short block on basically shooting the shotgun with the stock out of your shoulder, like short stocking it. And after that little block of instruction, basically you got to rep through it and get some reps. And then honestly, some of the most fun you can have out there, in my opinion, getting to run the Punisher, which is basically a giant prop line. So, I mean, really it's problem solving is what it is. You have all of these different like props, whether it's a sloped roof or concrete wall with holes, whatever it may be. You have all of these different things that you need to figure out. So find your target, be able to engage your target by building a good position while utilizing cover and concealment, and rinse and repeat all the way down the line. And so absolutely tons of fun shooting with the Genesis, but man, really, really fun shooting with that Henry. Again, I basically was like African loading this thing. I would keep a bunch of shot shells in between the fingers of my offhand and made it really easy to grab them, and did my best working through those problems. Really good time out there. And having finished that up, I think I was probably the last person to shoot through it. I walked back over, and the class had basically split and had rotated through during this whole time. And so Jack, director of Thunder Ranch, had half the class, Colton had the other class, or the other half rather, over on the Punisher. So over where Jack had the class was basically running people through this barricade drill. And so you'd essentially start either going left to right or right to left and engage 2 targets from each of the barricades, utilizing different steps, ports, whatever it may be. And so I was the last person. I finally got back over there. Jack was like, hey, do you want to do this? I'm like, no problem. Like, don't worry about it. People were waiting because they'd kind of just finished wrapping that up. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, oh, all right, cool. Like, I'll shoot it real quick. And he's like, all right, well, one, it's going to be real quick, and we're going to add some extra stuff for you because that way we can move on, and why not anyway? And I'm like, okay, like, tell me what I'm doing. So this turned into pretty much madness. Again, had to engage 2 targets from each position, or each barricade rather, except this time Jack would basically say, hey, you need to go from this barricade and now this one. And so it turned into basically wind sprints. He would run back and forth through these different barricades, be like, all right, off this one. And so I'm just basically sprinting back and forth with this Gen 12, trying to keep the gun up, trying to get my hits, and just getting smoked, honestly, by the end of it. Tons and tons of fun, though.
got it. I got it. Shoot all of it. All of it. All of it. All of it. Whole bag. Whole bag. Safe and hang.
And finally, the last evolution of 3-day shotgun class. Man, back to Rolling Thunder. Really fun because, well, this time I was like, let's shoot this Henry some more. Single shot. And we actually had 2 groups of 5. And so basically we were going head to head. We both started at the same time. And competition's good. It honestly was way closer than it should have been, considering I was running a single shot. But man, it was a good time out there. And yeah, just fighting through, getting that gun up and getting those hits, going back and forth, calling out when it got to me or when I finished shooting, and then finally getting to the end and yeah, shooting through it. Overall, it was an incredible course. I had a great time out there, great instructors, great group of people out there too. And shotguns, this was the only shotgun class I've ever been to, aside from like some training, whether it was mill or law enforcement. But even then, it's not that. And there were so many great facets to it, whether it was just printing stuff or even seeing how far we can shoot out with slugs, the whole vehicle block, actually seeing what will stop or what will go through respectively. And yeah, it was just really cool and just tons of reps. I will say with the gun I brought, namely that Genesis, like a lot of the class didn't even apply to me. Because here's the thing, with a tube-fed shotgun, whether it's semi-auto or pump, you are just constantly feeding that thing, trying to get it topped off because you're really, really limited. Versus with my gun, I'm like, oh, time for attack reload or combat reload if I happen to run a mag dry. And yeah, I basically took a shotgun class with 12 gauge carbine, but definitely got a lot out of it and really, really cool class. Good times out there. If it's something you're interested in, I would encourage you to check it out. There'll be links down below. You can go check out not only Thunder Ranch's courses, but also kind of my whole loadout from that 3-day course. And they offer kind of everything from defensive handgun to carbine work, night vision, long range stuff, shotgun, all of it. Good times out there. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.
One more black. One more black. One red. One black, 50 yards to the right. Oh, dude, you're the best.